Okay, this is the review for 5.6. We're going to do question 1, and that is graph y equals 2 times the cosine of 3x plus pi over 2, that quantity, on the interval 0 to pi. So anyhow, our amplitude is 2, and let's find that phase shift and period. First of all, to find the phase shift, you set bx plus c equal to 2 pi, and solving for bx, we get bx equals 2 pi plus c, and then solving for x, we get x equals 2 pi over b plus c over b. Now this is the phase shift, and this is the period. So let's do it for what we've been given. We've been given that 3x plus pi over 2, that's our bx plus c equals 2 pi. Now we'll isolate 3x and we get 3x equals 2 pi minus pi over 2. Now we don't combine these, we don't simplify that. We have two separate terms. We're going to maintain the separation so we can find the period and the phase shift. Now dividing through by 3, we get 2 pi over 3 minus, and 1/3 of pi over 2 is pi over 6. Okay, so here's our phase shift, and this is our period. Now, this is a cosine curve, so let's draw some general cosine curve. Okay, and I'll draw a center line. And turns out this will be the, yeah, we don't have a vertical shift, so this will be the actual x-axis, yeah. Okay, now the period is 2 pi over 3. So if we were to start here, if our vertical line was here and there was no horizontal shift, then we'd get to here, and that's 1 period, 2 pi over 3, and this is half a period, which is pi over 3. But there's been a horizontal shift. We've got to shift the graph back pi over 6 units, or shift the vertical axis that was here ahead pi over 6 units. Well, if this distance from, say, here to here is 2 pi over 3, this distance from here to here is pi over 3, then half of that is pi over 6, so we're going to shift this graph back pi over 6 units, or instead I'm just going to shift the vertical axis ahead pi over 6 units. And we'll call that y. Now this distance, this means this is 0, this is negative pi over 6. So now a full, let's see, a full period, it repeats starting right here, so that's 2 pi over 3. Then this would be pi over 3. This is pi over 6. And this is pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, which reduces to pi over 3, 3 pi over 6, which reduces to pi over 2, and 2 pi over 3. So now we've graphed it. Let's check it out. Let's verify that if we evaluate this thing for x equals pi over 6, that we get, oh yes, we have to take care of the amplitude, so I'll put a 2 here and a negative 2 there. So let's make sure that if we evaluate for pi over 6, we get a y value of -2. So we're going to look at y of pi over 6, which equals 2 times the cosine of 3, and in place of x, we're going to put a pi over 6. And then we have this plus pi over 2. So this equals 2 times the cosine, and 3 goes into 6 twice, so we've got a pi over 2 here plus a pi over 2. 2 pi over 2's is pi. And the cosine of pi is -1, so we get -2. Hey, we did it right. Good.